The moment Captain Adrian Kale stepped onto the polished observation deck of Virelia Prime, he immediately realized that alien diplomacy had the subtlety of a zero-gravity hamster on espresso. The floor hummed faintly under his boots, vibrating with the station's magnetic stabilizers, and the panoramic windows revealed a swirl of gas giants and asteroid fields so dizzying it made him wish he'd packed a motion sickness patch. He had been briefed extensively on the alien princess, Celira, a woman who looked almost human but with those unmistakable long ears that twitched with every emotion like twin antennae, sometimes signaling curiosity, sometimes irritation, sometimes amusement, and sometimes all three at once. Adrian was fairly certain he was going to spend most of the visit deciphering the subtle language of twitching earlobes, and he wasn't entirely sure he was qualified. He shuffled awkwardly past a trio of hovering protocol drones, which beeped at him as if to say, "Yes, human, we've noticed your inadequacy." One emitted a puff of scented gas, a polite apology encoded in a floral aroma that only the highly refined noses of Virelia's court could fully appreciate. Adrian coughed. He made a mental note to avoid floral diplomacy in the future, if possible. Celira appeared then, gliding into the room with the kind of poise that made gravity seem like a minor suggestion rather than a rule. Her eyes met his for a fraction of a second, a spark of recognition, or was it mild amusement? Dancing across their surface, her ears twitched once, then twice. Adrian suspected he was under evaluation. He cleared his throat and attempted his best impression of the confident peacekeeper he had been told to be, which mostly looked like a confused man trying to balance on an invisible tightrope while juggling imaginary fire. "You are Captain Adrian Kale," Celira said, voice smooth and melodic yet carrying the faintest lilt of amusement. "I've read reports of your competence, some of them exaggerated." Adrian raised a brow, "Some of them. That's diplomatic language for completely terrifying." "Got it." He offered what he hoped was a disarming grin, though he feared it looked more like the grimace of someone who had just discovered the cafeteria ran out of coffee. Celira's ears twitched again, this time in a way that seemed positively scandalized, and Adrian realized that the alien equivalent of a raised eyebrow could probably level a building if one misinterpreted it. The human military liaison who had accompanied him nudged Adrian subtly. "Remember, protocol. Do not insult the princess." Adrian whispered back, "I was planning to accidentally charm her instead," which only earned him a resigned sigh and an audible sigh of the hovering drone, which beeped as if to remind him that sarcasm wasn't universal. Celira led him down the observation corridor, past walls lined with holographic projectors displaying rotating schematics of interstellar trade routes and military zones. Adrian caught glimpses of his own reflection in the polished panels and noted that humans were a lot more uncoordinated in zero-gravity hallways than in training simulations. He tried to walk confidently. His right boot caught a subtle magnetic field, sending him spinning in a slow, elegant circle that might have looked intentional if anyone else had been watching. Celira's ears twitched rhythmically, like a metronome set to mockery. "You adapt well," she said, "for a human." Her tone suggested that she might have been genuinely impressed, or perhaps she was amused by the complete chaos humans caused simply by walking. Adrian decided to take it as a compliment. They reached a control deck overseeing the orbital rings surrounding the planet. Celira gestured toward a holographic map of the station and nearby sectors. "We are expecting disturbances along the outer perimeter. Your expertise may be helpful." Her smile was sly, hinting at tests Adrian was not entirely prepared for. Adrian leaned in, peering at the projected data with exaggerated concentration, and accidentally pressed a floating control panel, triggering an alarm that set the lights to a dramatic red pulse. He threw up his hands. "Technical difficulties," he offered lamely. Celira's ears flicked sharply to the side, and she made a noise that could only be interpreted as an alien chuckle. "Human ingenuity," she murmured almost fondly. As they continued their walkthrough, Celira casually referenced alien etiquette rules that were deliberately absurd, like bowing at specific frequencies to appease the station's AI or complimenting the station's cleaning drones for morale. Adrian nodded solemnly, committing each ridiculous protocol to memory, though he inwardly vowed to pretend he understood none of it. "Noted. I will pretend the drones are sentient and judge me silently. Should be easy." Celira's laugh was light, musical, a sound that made Adrian feel for the first time that diplomacy might actually be enjoyable. The day continued with minor incidents that somehow managed to skirt disaster. Adrian accidentally tripped over a security cordon that projected holographic holograms of dangerous beasts, which were, thankfully, only visual, and Celira's subtle humor undercut the tension perfectly. She nudged him toward observation decks with the most ridiculous zero-gravity lounges, where humans were not supposed to sit due to structural restrictions. Adrian, being Adrian, tested every chair, couch, and floating table, each time eliciting a twitch from Celira's ears that was somewhere between shock and laughter. By the time the afternoon had passed, he was reasonably certain that Virelia Prime's entire staff was watching him in silent amusement, and Celira was enjoying the chaos far more than protocol would ever allow. By evening, they had reached a quiet observation bay where the station's artificial sun bathed them in warm, golden light. Adrian was leaning against the railing, nursing a minor bruise from an earlier collision with a magnetic lift, and Celira stood nearby, ears subtly flicking in rhythm with his tentative humor. For the first time, Adrian noticed a flicker of curiosity that went beyond protocol in her gaze, a genuine interest that made him slightly uncomfortable in a good way. "You are different," Celira said, her tone carefully neutral but her ears twitching in a pattern Adrian interpreted as surprise mixed with amusement. Adrian tilted his head. "Different in a good way, I hope, or at least tolerable. Dangerous but funny is fine." She let out a soft laugh, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the quiet bay and make the distant stars appear less lonely. They stared out at the swirl of gas giants and asteroid belts, a silence punctuated only by the hum of the station. It was a silence that was not uncomfortable, not filled with tension or duty, but a quiet curiosity that neither had fully understood yet. Adrian thought for a fleeting moment that he could get used to the unpredictable language of long ears, zero-gravity mishaps, and alien humor. Celira, meanwhile, realized that this human might be the first she had encountered in years who was not only capable of surviving her court scrutiny but might actually make it fun. And somewhere in the background, a drone beeped apologetically, perhaps sensing that it had nothing to do but observe. Adrian winked at it. "Don't worry, little guy, I'll try not to break anything else." Celira's ears twitched sharply, perhaps laughter, perhaps disbelief, but for once the tension between worlds felt like it could be managed, maybe even enjoyed. Adrian woke to the faint hum of the orbital station's life support systems vibrating through the floor like an overly polite drum solo. He rolled over, narrowly avoiding knocking over the steaming cup of something vaguely caffeinated that Celira had insisted humans needed to survive. He blinked at her long ears twitching rhythmically as she hovered over him, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You're late," she said, though her tone suggested amusement more than anger. Adrian rubbed his eyes, pretending the cup wasn't half spilled across the console. "Time is relative," he said, "and besides, I'm fairly sure gravity wanted me to sleep in." Celira raised an eyebrow, or rather, her ears raised themselves in perfect synchrony, the alien equivalent of an eyebrow arch. "Relative, yes, but sleeping on your side of the bed with a spilled cup of Virelian coffee is not recommended." Adrian grinned, picking up the cup and pretending to examine the puddle. "Looks like abstract art," he said. Title: Human Clumsiness in Zero-G. Celira's faint laugh echoed through the chamber, a melodic sound that made the air feel lighter than the recycled oxygen ever could. By the time breakfast, or whatever passed for breakfast in alien terms, was over, Celira had lined up a series of training exercises meant to evaluate Adrian's adaptability and improvisational skills. The first involved piloting a small hovercraft along the orbital ring, maneuvering through a set of floating, spinning rings while avoiding automated defense drones that had been programmed to be slightly overzealous. Adrian cursed under his breath when he realized the craft responded to thought commands only marginally better than it responded to panicked shouting. "Okay," he muttered, "we're definitely not in the pilot's simulator back on Earth." Celira hovered nearby, ears flicking at precise intervals, her expression the perfect mixture of mock concern and genuine curiosity. "Try thinking less like a soldier," she suggested, "and more like a human who wishes to survive." Somehow, Adrian made it through the exercise barely, and the drones followed him with tiny digital frowns projected on their hulls whenever he narrowly avoided collision. Salira chuckled, "I did not expect that you would survive." "That counts as impressive." Adrian took a theatrical bow, almost tipping the hovercraft into a spin, and Salira's ears twitched with amusement as she shook her head. "I see," she said. "You are indeed different from all the others." Adrian grinned, certain that this was the closest he had ever been to alien praise without facing immediate combat. The next exercise involved decoding an artificial intelligence puzzle designed to simulate crisis management aboard a derelict ship. The AI emitted holographic firewalls, logic traps, and occasional sarcastic commentary, the last of which was distinctly human-unfriendly. Adrian squinted at the floating panels, muttering, "Okay, firewalls, sure. Sarcasm, unnecessary." Salira leaned in, watching him with the kind of attention reserved for fine wine tastings, though he suspected that was more metaphorical than accurate. "You are amusing," she commented. Adrian tilted his head. "I try. Sarcasm is my coping mechanism." Salira's ears twitched twice, once in rhythm with her amusement, once in rhythm with disbelief, and the AI's holographic commentary beeped disapprovingly at the human's insolence. By the time they were done, Adrian was sweating and smiling, his uniform slightly singed from misfired plasma conduits, while Salira's observation data showed minor anomalies. The human laughed in the face of danger, improvised solutions on the fly, and treated impossible problems as jokes waiting to be solved. "I do not know whether to report you for endangering station property," Salira said, her voice smooth, "or to commend you for ingenuity." Adrian shrugged, why not both? The afternoon brought an unexpected detour. Salira had arranged for Adrian to accompany her to the station's biodome, a sprawling artificial garden where alien flora thrived in zero gravity. Floating vines curled gracefully, luminescent flowers drifted like jellyfish, and tiny bioluminescent creatures hovered among the plants. Adrian, already bruised and slightly singed, tripped over a floating root and collided with a hovering creature, which emitted a sharp squeak. "Okay," he muttered, brushing himself off, "I promise I come in peace." Salira laughed, her ears flicking in delight. "You are clumsy even by human standards," she teased, "and yet charming." Adrian grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment, long ears and all." They wandered through the biodome, exchanging observations. Adrian was fascinated by the alien ecosystem, but Salira noticed how his questions revealed a mind not only curious but inventive. "You notice patterns humans usually ignore," she remarked. Adrian squinted at a floating plant that seemed to shift colors in response to their movements. "Or I'm just nosy," he replied, "which is basically the same thing, right?" Salira's laugh rang softly again, echoing against the biodome's curved walls. As evening approached, the station's artificial sun cast long, golden reflections across the metallic corridors. Salira suggested a visit to the observation deck again, where the swirling gas giant hung in the void like a massive eye watching them. Adrian leaned against the railing, taking a deep breath, and accidentally pressed a panel that projected a holographic map of the station's security system. "Oops," he said, "I may have activated some unnecessary alarms." Salira's ears twitched sharply and she shook her head in mock exasperation. "Humans are unpredictable," she said, "and yet somehow tolerable." For the first time, Adrian saw a flicker of curiosity in her eyes that went beyond amusement or evaluation. "Different from the others," she whispered more to herself than to him, her ears flicking in a complex rhythm that he could only guess at. Adrian, catching her glance, grinned. "I think I can live with that. You're different too, by the way. Long ears, sarcasm, zero-gravity grace, very intimidating." Salira's laugh floated around them, melodic and teasing, and for once, the vastness of space and the hum of machinery didn't feel alien or oppressive. They shared a moment of quiet connection, a fragile bridge forming between human and alien, humor and intrigue blending seamlessly in the zero-gravity light. And in the background, a drone beeped apologetically, perhaps sensing that it had nothing to do but observe. Adrian winked at it. "Don't worry, little guy, I'll try not to break anything else." Salira's ears twitched sharply, perhaps laughter, perhaps disbelief, but for the first time the tension between worlds felt manageable, maybe even enjoyable. The emergency sirens woke Adrian with a jolt, slamming him into the floor of his quarters with all the subtlety of a zero-gravity bowling ball. He rolled once, narrowly avoiding a floating mug of Virelian coffee that had somehow survived the chaos of the previous day, and blinked at the flashing lights. Salira's voice came over the calm but edged with that amusement that made him simultaneously terrified and strangely reassured. "Captain, you may wish to get dressed. Things are more urgent than I anticipated." Adrian scrambled, pulling on his uniform while muttering about the station's timing, zero-gravity hair disasters, and the cosmic injustice of alarms always choosing the worst possible moment. By the time he reached the observation deck, Salira was already there, long ears flicking sharply as she surveyed the holographic map of a derelict space station caught in the pull of a nearby gas giant. The orbital station's sensors had picked up a rogue fleet, AI-controlled but dangerously unpredictable, converging on the old station where vital trade data was stored. "We don't have much time," she said, voice even but laced with tension. Adrian peered at the map, squinting at the spinning red dots. "Ah, rogue AI, just my kind of vacation," he muttered. Salira's ears twitched in something close to exasperation, though Adrian suspected amusement too. "You may survive," she said, "but you are testing the patience of the Orbital Council." They boarded a small interceptor craft, its sleek hull gleaming against the void as automated systems hummed reassurance. Adrian wrestled with the controls, which were part instinct, part guesswork, and part sheer luck. Salira leaned over his shoulder, her ears flicking rhythmically as if counting the beats of his heart. "You handle this strangely," she commented. "But somehow it works." Adrian grinned. "I call it the art of chaos management. Not recommended for civilians." Salira's chuckle carried across the comms, a sound that made even the roaring engines seem tame. The derelict station loomed ahead, an ominous silhouette against the swirling clouds of the gas giant. Rogue drones swarmed around it, scanning for intruders with their red sensor eyes. Adrian maneuvered with a combination of luck, quick thinking, and frantic improvisation, occasionally muttering jokes at the drones as if they could appreciate sarcasm. "Hey, I said I'd try to survive, not impress you," he quipped, narrowly dodging a burst of automated fire. Salira's ears twitched sharply, almost in rhythm with his heartbeat, and she whispered, "You are extraordinary." Inside the station, zero-gravity corridors twisted and turned, forcing Adrian and Salira to adapt on the fly. Fire suppression systems hissed, panels floated away like rebellious debris, and AI turrets activated with alarming punctuality. Adrian ducked, dodged, and occasionally used his body as a makeshift shield for Salira when a rogue energy pulse threatened to strike her. "You know," he said, panting, "I've been in worse situations, but they never involved long ears and zero-G acrobatics." Salira smirked, ears flicking in amusement. "Do not underestimate yourself," she said, "and do not underestimate the utility of sarcasm." Their mission became a rhythm of improvisation. Adrian disarmed energy nodes with a combination of human intuition and trial and error, while Salira navigated security overrides with an elegance that made the chaos seem almost choreographed. At one point, Adrian accidentally triggered a holographic projection of a menacing alien beast, which promptly floated harmlessly through the corridor like a ghostly balloon. "Okay," he muttered, "I swear I'm not trying to summon the pets of doom." Salira's laughter echoed off the metallic walls, ears flicking in delight. "You are reckless, human, but amusingly effective." Finally, they reached the central data core where the rogue AI had concentrated its defenses. Adrian crouched behind a floating console, eyes scanning the complex network of circuits and pulsing lights. "All right," he muttered, "time for the human touch." Using a combination of intuitive hacking, improvised magnetic pulses, and his usual flair for chaos, he managed to override the rogue AI's control, causing the drones to deactivate and the station to stabilize. Salira watched him work, a mixture of awe and fondness in her gaze. When the last drone powered down, Adrian flopped against the console, exhausted but triumphant. "Victory!" he panted. Salira's ears twitched sharply, a gesture Adrian had by now learned meant approval. As they floated back to their craft, the gas giant spinning majestically below, Adrian realized how much he had changed. He had come to Virelia Prime as a soldier, cautious, measured, relying on protocol and training. He was leaving with a sense of adaptability, humor in the face of danger, and a bond that transcended human-alien boundaries. Salira, too, had changed. Years of routine encounters with humans had left her skeptical and slightly bored, but Adrian's presence, his laughter, his ingenuity, his charm, had reminded her of the unpredictable beauty of connection across worlds. Back on the orbital station, they reported their success, navigating the political aftermath with ease, a stark contrast to the chaotic skill